I'm Robbie Aronson, and this is The Bottom Line, Liverpool from the USA. Hi, my name is Robbie Aronson, and this is The Bottom Line podcast, Liverpool from the USA. I have two guests on today, two massive Liverpool fans. First up, Andrew Aronson. He goes to school at Cornell. He's been supporting Liverpool his whole life. And then Jonathan Aronson, my dad, who's also been supporting Liverpool his whole life. He got the whole family onto the Reds. So now we're going to get off to a quick start. We're going to talk about the RB Leipzig game. Liverpool took down RB Leipzig 2-0 midweek to win 4-0 on aggregate to go to the quarterfinals of the Champions League. Two goals were scored, one by Sadio Mane and the other by Mohamed Salah. But it was a big win. It ended kind of a down spell for Liverpool in the past couple of games. Andrew, what kind of went well for the team in that game?
So I think there were a few things. The biggest adjustment that was made was probably seeing Fabinho back in the midfield. I think it opened up play. It allowed for Thiago to really come into his own. He struggled as he's changed from Bayern Munich to Liverpool, but he was able to really control the game, control the tempo, and put through runners. He many times put through Salah, something we haven't seen so much. I think that was a huge adjustment for us, something we can look forward to in the future.
Now, John, I just want to go on to Thiago. He has struggled a little bit finding rhythm. I know I've talked to you about this before. Why do you think that is, that Thiago struggled? And do you think that this Fabinho in the midfield will help Thiago flourish in a Liverpool shirt for the first time?
Yeah, definitely. Thiago's a world-class player, but he's used to having a lot more time around the ball. I think he's found the Premier League. It's you don't get as much time as you maybe were used to in the Bundesliga, and he's been rushed to play and just not been quite as good. Also, Liverpool have been forced to play because of all the defensive problems due to injuries. They've been forced to play a lot deeper. He's been asked to play much more of a sixth position, which I think is very tough for him. It's not his natural position. But certainly with Fabinho there, it's a massive change for him.
And now Fabinho, because of all these injuries, is playing at center back. He's in the defense. He's now been pushed up to the midfield. I think now with Nat Phillips kind of finding his place and Kabak kind of finding his role in the team, we might see a lot more Fabinho in the midfield as that sixth role. Do you think overall that's going to help the team, or do you think it was kind of a one-off in that Leipzig game? Do you think?
No, I think it'll help the team a lot, but I think we shouldn't get too carried away. Liverpool have been really bad for the last 2 months, at least, maybe 3 months. Combination of things, but we shouldn't get too carried away. One game doesn't make a season. They were good against Leipzig. We need to see a little bit more before we start thinking we're back on the winning ways.
Now, Andrew, like on that point, what do you think has been, the problems? Why is Liverpool struggling so much?
So I think it's a whole host of things, and it's easy to say like, yeah, we've had a lot of injuries, but then you can look at some other teams like Leicester had similarly tons of injuries, and they're a smaller club with not as much money to spend and not the same big name players we have, and yet they've still been able to manage. So I don't think it's easy to just point to injuries, but I think what you got to realize with our injuries as opposed to other teams is like we've not just the injuries to center backs. We're also then taking our two best midfield players for over the last 2 years in Fabinho and Henderson, and then putting them out of position. So it's like a double injury when you lose your best player, you lose Virgil van Dijk, you lose Joe Gomez, you lose Joel Matip, and then you take your best midfield players, you put them out of position. It's all those things. I think additionally, like these players have been competing at the highest level for the last 2-3 seasons, and now you start to lose some games. I think complacency starts to sit in. There's no fans, and honestly, sometimes they kind of just look like they're not as into it as they once were, which is a crazy thing to say for the mentality monsters that we once were.
It's not uncommon when a team plays at the highest level for 4 years and you expect it to win every game to have a bit of burnout. And I think the team is a bit burnt out.
I mean,
I think that the fans need to come back. I think that they don't seem to have that same killer instinct without them.
What I've noticed too is over the past 2-3 years with the mentality monsters comment that you made, I mean, Jordan Henderson's and James Milner's role in that building that locker room and in the dressing room, these guys were a tight-knit group. They still are a very tight-knit group, but I feel like from the outside, it doesn't even look like they have the same kind of bonds, or like, are they clicking? Like,
it doesn't feel that way.
Do you think that the losing is kind of hurting the dressing room in a sense, or the complacency, or you kind of don't feel that?
I think it's losing and the fans.
I mean, Liverpool playing at Anfield is very different to playing at most other stadiums. It's a 12th man for them. The crowd is massive. And there are many, many games in the past few years that they've won where they haven't been the best team. But the crowd drives them on, and not having that home field advantage has certainly hurt. But, don't forget, Virgil van Dijk got injured early in the season. Gomez got injured early in the season. But at Christmas, we were still top of the league. So, yeah, we had all those injuries and we had all these things go wrong. But it's since Christmas that things have just suddenly, for some reason, the front three are completely misfiring. They don't seem to be taking their chances, and the ball's not rubbing our way. I mean, there are games in the past where we would have got one chance and scored and won. Now, teams have learned how to play against Liverpool. I personally think that as much as I love Jurgen Klopp, I think he for whatever reason, chooses not to change his formation. And a lot of teams have worked out how to play against Liverpool, and we play the same way against everybody. And it's not working at the moment.
So I want to switch over quickly, and we're going to go back into that point. Liverpool, since the start of the new year, has played 12 games in the Premier League. They've scored 10 goals in the 12 games, and they also have 10 points from those 12 games. Now, what I've noticed a lot, and as we're about to play Wolves at the Molineux, and Wolves tend to play three at the back. Now, a lot of the teams that we've lost to, whether it was Brighton, whether it was Chelsea, they play three at the back as well. And we haven't necessarily found a way to alter our formation to that. Do you think that we have a problem with three at the back, or do you think it's just, and that's what teams are going to play against us now?
Liverpool have played one way for the last 4 years. They basically expected their fullbacks to create most of their chances, and the midfielders do the covering and defend for them. Well, you haven't had Henderson and Fabinho there the whole season pretty much, covering for the fullbacks. And for whatever reason, I think Trent is with COVID early in the year, he's just maybe not quite in the same form. Robbo doesn't seem to be having the same energy as getting down the byline time after time, up and down the field. Maybe he's being forced to stay back and help the defense more. So we're not creating those chances. My personal opinion, I think someone like Naby Keita, and I know you think that I love Naby, and I do, but he's the kind of player that will at least run at defenses. He'll make something happen. That's the type of midfield player that we need right now. So someone that can create that pass. In the Leipzig game, he came on, he had 3 or 4 really good passes, in that short space of time that he came on. That's the way we're going to break teams down, because we're not breaking them down by Trent Alexander-Arnold just hitting cross after cross after cross into the middle. We don't exactly have giants there that are going to header the ball home. So we need to find another way to do it.
Adding on to that Naby Keita comment, I think that we see this a bit. We saw this a bit in Leipzig, and I kind of noticed it as soon as he came on. Diogo Jota, he comes on and he's so lively and he's dribbling around and he's moving in and out between defenders. And it's what our front three always did and now seems to not do as much. But I think he's going to be – he's a little spark plug. I think he'll make some changes. But moving back to what you're saying about the three at the back, Robbie, is I think it's not – we struggle against three at the back because most teams that play three at the back it's 5 at the back. It's 3 center backs and then 2 wing backs. And against us in particular, against some teams, it's 3 at the back. Against Liverpool, it's 5 at the back. And we can barely – if a team sits in their final third or the final 40 yards of the field, we can't break them down. We have decent possession, but never great possession. We never penetrate.
Because our front three all play very narrow. So we don't use the width of the field like City use. City play with a forward. It can be a false nine, but two very, very wide players, almost on the touchline. We don't. We rely on Trent and on Robbo to be our wide players.
Mane gets wide sometimes, but Mane's been
Occasionally,
poor.
but we tend to play very narrow up top, and we got to have 2-3 unbelievable little touches from Firmino to this one to that one, backwards and forwards in order to break teams down. And it's very, very hard to break down five at the back. Plus, some teams play with two holding midfielders as well. So
other teams break down five at the back. Other teams do it with ease. We used to do it with ease.
City do it because they play much wider than we do. Our three forwards tend to play very narrow.
So now I want to go to team news quickly. So obviously there are injuries for Liverpool to Van Dijk, Gomez, Matip, and Henderson. Those guys are out for a while. Now, Firmino missed the last few games. Klopp said in his presser he was not going to rule him out. For Wolves, they've had the long-standing injury to Raul Jimenez. Daniel Podence is going to be out, and and so some key players are missing for Wolves as well. Wolves sit currently 13th in the table. They're about 8 points back behind Liverpool. Drew their last game against Villa 0-0, lost to City 4-1. So they're not really fit and firing either, per se. But I want to ask you guys quickly. You guys were talking about Naby Keita earlier. Now, Dad or John, I'm going to ask you first. I want to see your lineup predictions. I'm going to ask you to give the lineup that you would give for the upcoming Wolves game. And then, Andrew, I want to ask you the lineup that you think Klopp will give for the upcoming Wolves game. And then we can mix and match, compare the tactics, and then we'll go on. So,
okay.
John, what do you think?
I would go with Alisson, who's obviously going to be the goalkeeper. Trent and Robbo, the fullbacks. I think that Nat Phillips and Kabak at centre back, maybe we found a pairing that can see out the season. Hopefully we can. Nat Phillips had a super game. Maybe, we shouldn't expect too much. But if those four can start at the back for a couple of games and build up an understanding, it'll allow Fabinho to play in the six, which is key. If he plays in the six, it allows Thiago to have more room. I think Ginny has played himself into the ground. I think he's had way too much soccer. He needs a break. I would start Naby Keita. And right now, if Bobby's not fit, it looks like Jota, Mane, and Salah up front.
Yeah, Andrews. I mean, that sounds a reasonable lineup. I guess you want Thiago instead of Curtis Jones, Dad.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I like Curtis Jones a lot, but, I just don't know yet whether he's – for some reason – look, I don't know. That would be my lineup. I would pick Naby as instead of Ginny. Not that Ginny's played badly. Ginny's played well all year, but I think he's just played too much. I think his legs must be exhausted. I don't think he's missed a minute.
And Andrew, are you going to have a similar team or –
Pretty similar. Obviously, Alisson in goal. The fullbacks, as always, should be Trent and Robertson. And then I do think he'll stick with the Phillips and Kabak pairing, which obviously gives me a little bit of fright, but there's not that much he can do. Fabinho will slot into the midfield. I think he's going to go again with the Fabinho-Thiago pairing. I think he'll go with Wijnaldum. I mean, I kind of would like that. I kind of like to see either Naby Keita or Curtis Jones. I think both of them have a little bit of what we're talking about where they're not – Gini's an amazing player, but he's kind of like –
But he doesn't create anything.
He's a little bit – you know what you're getting with him. Like, he doesn't lose the ball. He makes a lot of passes. He completes passes. But he doesn't drive at defenders. Like, he doesn't really scare anyone. But I think that's what he'll go with, which is a bit of a boring midfield, but three great players. And then – a front three of Mane, Salah, and Diogo Jota.
Yeah, so pretty much a similar team to Dad. I mean, talking about Jota, obviously we signed him from Wolves over the summer. He came in instant impact right away, right? Gets his injury, comes back, hasn't scored since he came back, has had some lively moments, has had some dull moments, missed a few chances against Leipzig. Are you expecting anything in particular from him? And, and how impressed have you been from his signing?
It would be nice if he did, but I think it's expecting too much because, he had a hot vein of form. It doesn't mean that he's necessarily going to be someone that scores 30 goes a season. So because he was he was on that run rate.
Yeah, but he's lively. He drives at defenders. Even like you notice, I feel like he finds himself in the right position in the box. Like the ball seems to want to fall to him all the time, which is surprising. He's not a big guy. He's not a striker, but maybe who knows? Maybe his confidence is still there. I feel like he's just going to find himself in positions. He looks dangerous. I think he'll give spaces for Salah to get in behind and Mane to hopefully get in behind. I mean, if Diogo Jota can get Mane and Salah into form, I mean, Salah scored a lot of goals, but Mane in particular, like Mane's been a shell of himself all season.
So you guys wouldn't change the formation though to try to fix what you're going to stick with the 4-3-3 as you guys were saying. Like do you think we might need a formation change? Is that something you'd even consider? But now that Fabinho's back in the midfield, does it change things? Like, what do you think?
We don't have an out and out winger. We don't have those kind of players. I mean, Jota, I don't think is a true winger in the sense that he has amazing speed or anything like that. He's not like Raheem Sterling that's going to scare defenders. So I don't think we have the personnel. The team's not built to really change the formation. I mean, could he have an extra midfielder and one less striker? Maybe. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of Divock Origi, but he did look quite good when he came on the other day. So I wouldn't be surprised if he actually gets another chance. Not starting, but another chance to come on. I mean, our bench is very lightweight at the moment. Shaqiri's off form. Oxlade-Chamberlain hasn't done anything all season. I mean, you feel for Curtis Jones because you'd like to see him get some more playing time because he's been great when he's been on the field. James Milner hasn't really been his usual self since he's come back from injury. He's always going to give you 110%, but he doesn't look like he's lighting anything up. So we don't have a lot of options right now, other than
Curtis, Naby, and I guess now we'll either have Jota or Firmino. But other than them, like you really don't look at your bench and think if we bring on X, we'll get something out of it.
You just don't see it. That's you don't see somebody that's going to suddenly you look at your bench and say, "Wow, we can bring this one onto that one on." We just don't seem to have those players.
When we're fully fit, I think we have it. Because you have good midfield players that have to sit on the bench if you're fully fit. And then you have either Jota or Firmino probably not starting, and one of them's coming on. But right now, it doesn't feel like it's all clicking.
All right, so now I want to switch quickly. We're going to go with a few predictions. First I want to just give the betting odds for the game. Liverpool are heavy favorites at -148 to win. Wolves are sitting, even though they're at home, at +378 because they have been a little bit off form, and the draw is +261. The over-under for the game is 2.5 goals. Might hit the under with the way both of these teams are scoring. But I want to ask you guys three questions. The first is, who is going to score the first goal? What's going to be the final scoreline of the game? And who is going to be like the X factor? Like if Liverpool wins, it is because of this player, or if Wolves win, it's going to be because of this player. Who's going to be the biggest?
Well, we're both Liverpool fans, so I'd be surprised if Andrew picks Wolves to win. In my predictor app, I picked Liverpool to win 1-0, and maybe that's wishful thinking. I don't know.
And
so that's what I went for.
Who scores the goal?
I don't care. Anybody. Sadio Mane. He's due for one.
And who's the X factor for the game, though, Dad? Who's going to be the X factor for the game?
Well, I think for Liverpool, the X factor is Fabinho. If he can play in the six and give us help the team to play higher up the field instead of so deep, where we played so deep all season. When we win the ball back, you know, the way Liverpool played all of last year because of Van Dijk and Gomez's tremendous pace, we were able to play very high. So both of them would stand almost on the halfway line, and they weren't worried about a ball coming over the top because they could get back quick enough to cover. Well, you know, Kabak and Nat Phillips don't have a lot of pace. They have to stand deeper. But if they've got Fabinho helping to cover with them, they can maybe move 10 yards up the field. And that 10 yards makes a difference, because when you win possession 10 yards further up the field, you can create something maybe a little quicker. Right now, when we win it so deep, other teams have 10 men behind the ball by the time we get to the halfway line.
Yeah.
That's why they're so difficult to break down. And yes, we pass it around 100 times trying to look for an opening, but it's very hard to find an opening behind 10 men. So we need to win the ball higher up the field. We need to press higher up the field, and that we haven't been doing.
And Andrew, same questions for you. And also, I want you to focus too, on the flip side, the key player for Wolves. If Wolves were to scare us or do something, you know, who's the player that Liverpool should have to worry for?
Yeah. So I would say that my prediction for the game, I'll say 2-1. We haven't kept a clean sheet. It feels like we never keep clean sheets anymore. I'd be surprised if we keep one, even though we kept one against Leipzig. I think that the difference maker in the game is for Liverpool, on Liverpool's side, is going to be Jota. I think he just gives us a little bit of energy that's been missing for a while. The team has been so strong and so good. It's like we were talking about at the beginning, and the players seem to just be a little bit flatter, and he comes in and he seems like he's lively. He wants to prove something. I think that's there with him more so than other people. I think that Salah scores the first goal, gets the game started, then probably they score. Maybe Jota comes back and wins it for us. The player, and he's been in bad form all season, but the player that obviously, like, as an opposing fan, like, that scares you the most is Adama Traore.
Your favorite player on FIFA.
He's definitely could be my favorite player on FIFA. But he's a powerful player, and on his day, he's pretty much as tough to defend as anyone else. Sometimes, like, he goes one-on-one against your fullback, and you look at the TV screen and you're not excited. So I think if we can slow him down, I mean, like you said, they don't have Prudence. It's like that's a lot of pace that's out of the team without him. But Adama on the counter, if they're low on possession, is scary. Something I wanted to note though, Dad, you mentioned it when you were talking. We have a lot of good possession, but we don't really create a lot of chances. In so many of these games, we've had like 70, 65%, 70% possession. Something that I noticed in the Leipzig game is we were outpossessed, and yet we created more chances in that game than we've created in the last month. I think it was close to 60-40 the other way.
Well, thanks for listening to The Bottom Line, Liverpool from the USA. You know, we're going to have weekly episodes. We're going to try to have expert fans from the United States, from abroad, try to bring some former players in as well. But to make this podcast great, we need you. We need more fan engagement. We need you to have questions and comments and want to answer anything. So, you know, in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to put some polls out, and hopefully I can get some more fan engagement. But finally, you'll never walk alone. Thanks for listening. I'm Robbie Aronson, and this is The Bottom Line, Liverpool from the USA.